Dear students, welcome to our series on ethics case studies. We have already seen 3 case studies and this would be our lecture number 4. We will take up another case study in this particular lecture. So, the idea behind this particular series is that in every lecture we will take up a specific case study that has been asked in the previous year examination, and then we will try to analyze those case studies. In this way, we will try to help the students in understanding as to how they can approach the case studies and how effectively they can solve the case studies when they are appearing in the mains examination. The case study, or I would say the ethics paper 4, which also involves the case studies, has been added by UPSC recently. I mean, in 2013 it was introduced by UPSC, and the very idea behind this paper is to see whether the students or the aspirants who are preparing for civil service examination, whether they are in a position to understand various ethical issues and how well are they able to handle these ethical issues and ethical dilemmas when they get into administration, not only in administration but also in their private life. So that is the idea as to why this ethics case study has been introduced. But unfortunately, in our country, in India, there is no formal education with regard to case studies. But however, the case study approach has been part of academic studies in most of the Western countries. But however, it has been recently introduced in civil service examination. In our previous lectures, we have already taken a few case studies, and majorly we understand the subject matters on which the case studies has been asked. So basically, they are asked from the civil services values, they are asked from probity in governance, they are asked from some of the societal issues like corruption, and we have already seen there was an issue on illegal migration, environmental degradation. So these are all some of the common subject matters on which the case studies are asked usually by UPSC. So today we are going to take one more case that is asked in the UPSC examination in 2022. So what is this particular case? Let me briefly explain you about this particular case before I get into the case study. So here you are appointed as an officer and you are heading a section under the Pollution Control Board, which has the authority to ensure compliance and to implement various pollution control measures. And you are appointed in a particular area where there is a lot of medium and small scale industries, and you also find that a lot of migrant laborers are employed in these industries. And you also understand that all these industries have environmental clearances which has been issued by the appropriate or the competent authority. But despite these clearances, you also feel, and it has also been proved, that they continue to violate various norms of the environmental degradation which you are supposed to protect as a compliance officer, and they have been engaging in various environmental degradation. And hence what you have done is you will have issued a notice to all these industries to apply for fresh clearances. And against this particular action of you, there is a lot of protest from various stakeholders, which includes the industries, which includes the labor unions, the migrant laborers, the local politicians. And despite these protests, there is also a personal threat from unknown, anonymous threat has been given to you to withdraw this particular order. And at the same time, there are some of your colleagues who support you for this particular action, and you also get support from the local NGO. So this is what is the case study. So in this case study, there are few directives that is given in the question. So let us try to understand these directives. But before I proceed, I will also take you through the case study so that you can understand as to how to approach this particular case study and how to answer the various directives that is given in this particular case study. But before I proceed, which I repeated in the previous classes also. So before I proceed further, what is the idea behind a case study is that how well you are able to deal with various ethical issues. A case study is a set of facts that is presented in front of you. A case study involves a number of stakeholders. It involves one or two ethical issues or even more ethical issues. It can put you under certain situations of dilemma where you are not sure as to how to act in such a situation. So by giving such case study, UPSC is trying to assess how good officer you are, how well you are bringing out your value system in making your choices and decisions under such a circumstances. So as someone who wanted to approach a case study, first you should be in a position to understand as to what are the various ethical issues in a particular case study. When I say ethical issues, what kind of wrong things that you find in that particular area. It can be a legal issue also, it can be an ethical issue also. First try to understand the mistakes. First I try to understand the problems in the entire case study. Once you are able to identify the issues and the problems, then further you can decide on the course of action. So the first important thing is identifying the issues. Alright, so with this information, I'll just proceed further. I'll just walk you through the case study very quickly. And once you are done with the case study, going through the case study, we'll also look into the various directives and we'll see as to what kind of course of actions or the options can be taken with regard to this particular case study. So we'll just get into the case study, but before that, a small announcement from StudyIQ, so you can understand. So behind that you can understand that there is the notice that StudyIQ is launching its batch for the month of August. So this time the batches would be evening batches starting on 23rd of August. And this is the umbrella program of StudyIQ, which includes its prelims to interview batch. It is also called as P2I batch because this course provides everything right from the prelims till the interview stage. So it has number of features. For more information on these courses, you can visit the StudyIQ website, you can download the brochure and you can see as to what are the various features of these courses. And the courses are offered in all the three languages, that is in English and also in the Hindi language. And across these courses, whichever course that you want to take up, and if you want an additional discount on these courses, you can use my code Babu. Alright, so with that information, I will just directly get into the case. So what is this particular case study? So here it is said that you are appointed. So you will have to put yourself in that particular position. So look into this particular case study. So the case study is saying that you are appointed as an officer heading a section of Environmental Pollution Control Board to ensure compliance and its follow-up. So you are the one who is heading this section and you have to ensure compliance so as to protect the environment and also to prevent it from any form of degradation. And you should also follow up whether there is a compliance or not. So it is your responsibility. In that region, there were large number of small and medium industries. So you can understand that there is a lot of industries. So idea is there is possibility that there can be lot of non-compliance also. There is possibility that there are a lot of people employed also in these industries. So that is something that you have to keep in your mind, which had been granted clearances. So they have already been granted clearances by the appropriate authority. You learned that these industries provide employment to many migrant workers. So that is also you are aware of this particular fact. Most of these industrial units have got environmental clearances certificate in their possession. That means all these industries which is here, they also got environmental clearances. That means the competent authority has already given it. That is also very clear. The environmental clearances seek to curb the industries and the projects that supposed to hamper the environment and the living species in the region. So what is the purpose of these environmental clearances? They have to keep a check on those projects which may have an impact on the environment and the ecosystem, so they should not be allowed. Or it has to be modified appropriately in the sense that they do not degrade the environment. But in practice, most of these units remain to be polluting units in several ways. So, but in practice, if you see, most of these units remain to be polluting units in several ways like air, water and soil pollution. As such, the local people encountered persistent health problems. So what do you understand here? So you understand that here the very idea of having this is to protect the environment, but at the same time, despite the clearances which has been given, a lot of industries has been involving in what is called as environmental degradation, which is also causing a lot of health issues to the local people. So there is an ethical issue that is involved here. So the first question is that despite the clearances, or you can understand that despite the clearances, how they are able to do the environmental degradation. So that means there can be two possibilities. One is that there is non-compliance on the part of these industries despite the clearances that has been given. That means lack of enforceability on the part of the government. Or the second issue is that there can be connivance between these industries and the officer or the competent authority which is giving the clearances. So that is very clear, because despite the clearances, a lot of environmental issues are happening. And there is also a lot of health issues to the local people and the local ecosystem is getting affected. So that is again an ethical issue here. It was confirmed that the majority of the industries were violating the environmental compliances. So you have proof that yes, that the majority of the industries are violating environmental compliances. You issued notice to all these industrial units to apply for fresh environmental clearance certificate from the competent authority. However, your action is met with hostile response from a section of the industrial units, other vested interest persons and a section of the local politicians. So of course, you as a honest officer trying to objectively function your duty, perform your duty, and hence you are asking for fresh clearances. But however, there is a lot of hostile reactions from the vested interest group and the local people who have interest in these industries. The workers also become hostile to you as they felt that your action would lead to closure of these industrial units, and the resultant unemployment will lead to insecurity, uncertainty in their livelihood. So obviously, yes, the migrant laborers and the other workers might feel insecure because they do not know what will happen if the fresh clearances are to be applied. Many owners of these industries approach to you with a plea that you should not initiate harsh action as it would compel them their units and cause huge financial loss, shortage of their products in the market. So it can create other problems as well. These would obviously add to the sufferings of the laborers and the consumers alike. So you are also very clear that if this is happening, it can create problem to the migrant laborers and the consumers who are getting services from these industrial establishments. The labor union also sent you a representation requesting against the closure of the units. You simultaneously started receiving threats from unknown corners. There is also personal threat to you, and you don't even know from whom you are getting these threats. So that is also a big issue. You, however, received supports from some of your colleagues who advised you to act freely and ensure environmental compliances. Local NGOs also came to your act freely to ensure environmental compliances. So local NGOs also came to your support, and they also demanded the closure of the polluting units immediately. So here you can see a classic case where an officer is trying to perform his duty objectively and trying to ensure integrity in his duty, but at the same time he is also facing a lot of other concerns. There is a lot of ethical issues, and he is also pushed a lot of ethical dilemmas as to what he should do. So under such circumstances, in this case study, what are the directives that is given in the constitution? What are the options available to you under the given situation? So you as an officer in this particular position, what kind of options will you take? And critically examine the options listed by you. So what are the assessment of these options? So we'll try to understand that what type of mechanism you suggest to ensure environmental compliance. So here they are basically trying to understand as to what kind of suggestions, what kind of steps should you take. So here UPSC is also making one thing sure, that you as a civil servant, you as an aspirant preparing for civil service should also be aware of the general laws in our country. So probably as an aspirant you should be aware of the Water Pollution Act 1974, the Air Pollution Act 1981. So all these things also provides as to what kind of steps the Pollution Control Board has to take in order to prevent the environmental degradation and to provide a pollution free environment. So probably if you are aware of that, you can lay down certain steps here. And then finally, what are the ethical dilemmas faced in exercising this option? Of course, he has to face a lot of ethical dilemma, because on the one hand he wanted to shut down the polluting industries. But if you shut down the polluting industries, then what will happen to the livelihood of the people, the laborers who are involved in all those things? On the one hand, you'll have to implement the law, there is rule of law. On the other hand, the livelihood of the people. So I'm just trying to say one ethical dilemma. And of course, there's a lot of other dilemmas which we'll also discuss. Okay. So in this background, let us try to solve this particular case study. So what is the approach that you take? First, try to identify the subject matter, as I already said. What could be the possible subject matter the entire case is revolving around? Now, once you identify that, it will be better to choose the various courses of action and the choice of words. It depends upon identifying the subject matter. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the various parties involved in this particular case study? What are the various ethical issues in this particular case study? What do you feel as wrong in the entire case study? And then what are the various, and then we'll also try to answer the question as per the directives. So while identifying the ethical issue, you can also understand the ethical dilemma. So dilemmas is possibly you have two options, but you're not very clear as to whether to choose this option or another option. Basically, you're not clear as to what is right and what is wrong. Or even if you're clear that something is right and wrong, still you are confused as to what kind of action you'll have to take. So you'll have to once identify all those things, it will be very easy for you to approach this particular case study. Now, to me, what is the subject matter of this particular case study? The subject matter is majorly revolving around the environmental protection. So there is an officer who is to enforce the law, be it the Water Pollution Act or the Air Pollution Act. So there is an officer who has to enforce the law, and the law is aimed at protecting the environment, and this officer is supposed to enforce this particular law. But in the process, as an officer who wanted to enforce the law, he should also carry forward a lot of civil service values. That means as per the oath and as per the law of the land, he has to carry out his duties with utmost objectivity, and he has to exhibit highest standards in his professional life, which I think in this case the officer is trying to do. So a lot of foundational values like objectivity, integrity is also related in this particular case. So that is also the subject matter of this particular case. But in the process, he also faced a lot of ethical dilemmas and ethical concerns. As I already said, on the one hand, he wanted to enforce the law, but on the other hand, he might feel that the people might lose their livelihood. What about the migrant laborers? So he is also undergoing a lot of ethical dilemmas. So there's also a topic in your syllabus, ethical concerns and dilemmas in government. So ethical concerns and dilemmas in government. So the environmental protection is a major theme. UPSC keep asking questions in these areas, along with the civil service values and what kind of ethical concerns and dilemmas an officer can face when he is trying to enforce his duties and responsibilities. So this is a major subject matter, in my opinion, based on which the question is framed. And then if you look into the stakeholders, stakeholder is self and his colleagues, because they are all trying to implement this particular law. So he wanted to enforce the law. He wanted to ask these industries to go for fresh clearances, but the colleagues are also supporting it. So they are also stakeholders. And of course, whatever happens out of this particular case, there can be an effect on all the small and medium scale industries, the owners who are all part of it. Of course, the migrant laborers are important stakeholders because their livelihood is at stake in case if the industries are to be shut down. So they are also part of it. The local community, of course, yes. So look at this particular case. If you see this particular case, on the one hand, there are owners, they are taking the benefit. On the other hand, the migrant laborers are employed, so they also have a benefit. But the local community, neither they are employees nor they are the owners, and still they have to face the environmental hazards and health issues. So of course, they are the worst affected because of this. So they are very important stakeholders. And then of course, the local politician, as per the case study, the labor unions and the other vested interest group. So they also have an interest. The local NGO, as per the case study, which is trying to protect the environment, so which is trying to protect the local ecosystem, they also have an interest. And of course, the government is someone who has to enforce the law, so they also have an interest. So they are the various stakeholders in this particular case. So once you can list down the stakeholders, before we proceed to the options, what are the various ethical issues? You can also go through a lot of assessment of these ethical issues. So what are the various ethical issues to me? Ethical issue means try to identify the issues in this particular case study. So to you, something is wrong in this particular case study, then just list down these things, the major things that you feel that it is not appropriate. So those would be an ethical issue. Now, to my knowledge, so these are all some of the ethical issues. So one, the possession of clearances despite the violation of the compliance. Now, the biggest ethical concern to me in this case is, on the one hand, all the industries are having the environmental clearances, but they are also engaged in what is called as non-compliance. They are polluting the environment. How is that possible? As I already discussed, it might be possible that there should be a connivance between the industries and the government authority, or it might be possible that the government authority is not enforcing the law appropriately. In both the cases, there is an ethical concern. In both the cases, it is wrong. So in fact, this is one of the major ethical concern in this particular case. And as a result of the non-compliance or as a result of connivance, so what is actually happening? There is air pollution, water pollution and soil pollution, and that also led to the persistent health issues of the local people. So it is directly impacting the sustainable development of the region and the sustainable development of the local community. So what's affected because of this is the local community. And because of this pollution, the pollution happens because one reason could be possibly that non-compliance. That means the officers are not objectively enforcing their duties and responsibilities. They are not carrying out the official duties in the utmost integral manner, or I would say that they are not ensuring what is called as probity in governance. They are not maintaining the highest standards in carrying out their duties and responsibility. So again, it is a direct violation of the civil service values. So that is another ethical issue here in case if someone is not enforcing it. But here in this case, you as a sincere officer, you are trying to enforce this. So you are also ensuring your objectivity and integrity after you have taken the responsibility. But you can understand here that if suppose you are trying to enforce the duties and responsibilities in an objective manner, but then the problem is the actions can also lead to loss of livelihood of some of the people. So some of the values, among the various values, the values with regard to a civil service also says that they should have compassion and they should also be empathetic. So here there is an ethical dilemma to the officer as to what he has to do, whether he has to shut down these things if they are not having the clearances, these industries, or thinking of the livelihood of the migrant laborers. So he has to be, he has to be little bit more empathetic. So again, this is an ethical issue. So because the livelihood of the laborers and the services to the consumers might also get affected if he is trying to enforce the duties objectively. So that is again an ethical issue. And then the line of duty, he is receiving threats. So this is again a big issue. In the line of duty, nothing is personal for him against any of the industries, but he is getting a threat from the unknown corners, an anonymous threat which he is getting, which may also lead to risking his life. So which is not supposed to happen to a sincere officer. So these are all the various ethical issues, to my opinion. So you can think of other ethical issues also, but try to keep in mind there is a time restriction for all those things. So now let us try to understand as to the directives that is given in the constitution. So directives means finally after making all these assessment, now we will have to answer the question. So that is basically what is called as the directives. What are the directives? So I have combined both the directives, so we can write it together here. What are the options available to you under the given situation? So that means you as an officer who has to ensure this particular compliance, what are the various options that is available to you? 2. Critically examine the options listed by you. So that is the next thing. So critically examine the options listed to you. So that means whatever options that you are going to decide, you will have to make a critical assessment of those options. What is right and what is wrong in those options. All right. So first let us try to go through the options. So this is my sincere suggestion to all the students. So let us not restrict yourself to the suggestions that I am giving here, the choices that I am giving here. You can also put your own suggestions, and in fact you can put it in the comment box so that it can be a fruitful discussion also. So the other students will also get a lot of idea. So in this way you can generate multiple ideas before you go to the examination. All right, so what is the first option? So that I have listed it here. Strictly enforcing the notice. The notice is to get the clearances again and shut down all the industrial establishments which lacks compliance. That means the officer has already issued notice to get the clearances again, and those industries which is not able to get the clearances again, so let him shut down these industries. So in this case, what is good about it is that he is strictly enforcing the law. So he is upholding the rule of law and he is carrying out his duties with utmost objectivity and integrity. But then on the flip side, if you see, there could be livelihood issues. Is it ethically right? You are legally right in doing that. Is it ethically right to deprive certain people of their livelihood in this particular manner? So again, this is the positive side. On the flip side, there is also some negative in this particular option. Second thing is silently dilute the matter and let it go, as you don't want to take any personal risk in the line of duty. Of course, we have already seen that he is getting some threats from the unknown corners because of the notice that he has already issued. The officer is just trying to enforce his duty and he is getting threat, which may also, it may possible that he has to risk his life as well. So is it okay for him to still proceed further? In line of duty, is it okay to have a personal loss? So here you can see that there is a conflict of interest, and for him whether to do it or not to do it. If he do it, yes, the good thing is that he will uphold the rule of law. As I already said, he is performing his duty effectively. He is enforcing compliance and then thereby protecting the local environment. All those things are good, but there is a personal risk to him. So what he can do is he can silently dilute this particular matter. Is not moving it forward. In fact, the other officers probably were doing like this and nobody questioned him also. So in this case, there is no problem to him professionally, but yes, but he is not enforcing his duty. So his ethical conscience, his moral conscience might not allow him to do that, because as an officer, he has to enforce his duty and responsibility, even if he has to face some threat. So that is the negative aspect of this particular thing, but positively, yes, he will not have any personal problems, but negatively, lot of problems. In fact, the environment will also get degraded. There is no protection to the local community. So these are all the negative options. Now come to the third option. So what he can do, the third option is he can call upon various stakeholders. So in this, the major stakeholders including the industrial establishments, industrial establishment representatives, labor unions, local community. So here it's not community, it is local community, local community, NGOs, and try to address the issue transparently and order for a time-bound compliance to pollution standards as per the law. So the third option, what he is trying to do is, how the third option is different from the first option. In the first option, he has not called upon the stakeholders, directly he is implementing the law, nothing wrong in that. But what is there in the third option is he is calling upon all the stakeholders and trying to transparently make one stakeholder understand as to how their actions can affect the others. Probably he is trying to make understand that how the local community is getting affected because of your actions, that is the industrial owners, and suppose if the action is to be taken, how it will affect the laborers. So that he is trying to sensitize the various stakeholders transparently, so that he will sensitize them and also will give them some time, and then basically he asks them to implement these things. Otherwise, probably he has to take a strict action on those things. So in this way, on the one hand, he is trying to enforce the compliance, of course, protect the environment. He also brings in a lot of sensitization of this particular issue, and he also makes people understand why sustainable development and the protection of environment is very important. At the same time, it is not costing the livelihood to the migrant laborers, and nor it is an inconvenience to the local community, which the local people who are also looking for the services of these industries. So this is the positive thing about option number 3. So to me, what would be the best appropriate option, although they have not asked it? So option C, the last option, option number 3 would be the best option, because here on the one hand he is ensuring compliance, there is no doubt in that, but at the same time he is making it more transparent. He is making it more transparent, he is sensitizing the people, he is also roping in the local NGOs, probably if they can help in reducing the pollution and helping the local community. So all those things can be done under option 3, although they have not asked as to what is the best option. So try to give a sensible option when you write an answer. Now come to the next directive. What type of mechanisms would you suggest to ensure environmental compliance? So here UPSC is trying to understand, as someone who is preparing for UPSC, what is your level of awareness? Have you thought about the various issues of environmental pollutions in our country? So here for me, you should have a proper understanding of this particular act. So to ensure strict compliance and enforcement, first of all, you should know as to what are the various provisions in the Water Pollution Act and the Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act 1974, Air Pollution Act 1981. So they provide for the Pollution Control Board, both the Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Board. So if you go through this, there are a number of provisions which is already there. So if you can write it, it is well and good. But if you are not aware of it, just try to use your general awareness and a little bit of general knowledge. So based on which you feel that the pollution can be prevented. So if you look into the law, it is saying that the Pollution Control Board has to do regular inspections and sample collections from various units. So as an officer who is involved in the compliance, this is your duty. You have to go for regular inspections and the collection of samples, and then testing those samples, whatever may be, it may be an effluent or a gas. So testing those things, whether it is poisonous or it is within the permissible limit. Based on the results, notice for compliance in case of minor non-compliance. So whenever there is a minor non-compliance, even let us assume that there is a slightest of deviation, so you will have to immediately issue notice to those organizations and make sure that they are in compliance. And in case, let us assume that the compliance is very serious, let us assume that this is an emergency case or the compliance is very serious, non-compliance is very serious, then you can do immediate suspension of operation in those cases. Okay. So because if it is an emergency thing and it is very non-serious compliance, it can have a lot of health impacts and environmental degradation. So here you cannot be liberal in allowing them to continue with their operation. So here immediate suspension. Not only immediate suspension, you should also apply what is called as the polluters pay principle. The industries which has polluted, they should provide the money to take up to engage in what is called as the recovery of the ecosystem again. Okay, so that is what is polluters pay principle. So you can use that also. and then sensitization of all these stakeholders. So as an officer who is responsible for compliance, you should sensitize all these stakeholders on a regular basis so that you get the information, so that everybody does their responsibility, which can go a long way in protecting the environment and preventing the degradation. So apart from that, you should also take a lot of preventive measures where you can also rope in the non-governmental organization. So one preventive measure is regular inspection. So even if you do regular inspection, it is a preventive measure. When you know that it is about to go or it is about to become a harmful hazard, harmful effluent or something, you can automatically inform the industries so that you prevent these environmental hazards in the first place. So all these actions can be probably taken by you to prevent this particular issue. All right. So now come to the last directive that is given here. What are the various ethical dilemmas? So in the process as an officer, so what kind of ethical dilemmas do you face? So what are the ethical dilemmas that you face in the, what are the various ethical dilemmas that you face in exercising the following options? If you see the various ethical dilemmas that you face in the following options, ethical dilemmas are something where you are not clear what to do. There are multiple options and you are not clear as to whether it is to be done or it is not to be done. So the first ethical dilemma that you can face here is that the health and the sustainable development of the local community versus the livelihood of the migrant laborers. This is the biggest concern that you can have. Is on the one hand, the local community is getting affected, their ecosystem is getting affected, but on the other hand, if you shut down this immediately, what will happen to the livelihood of the migrant laborers? Because migrant laborers also have nothing to do in their own areas. That's why they have come as a migrant labor. So what to do in this particular case? That's the biggest dilemma that he could face. Second thing is he has a dilemma between his duty ethics versus his personal interest. There is certain professional responsibility for him to enforce the law, and that professional responsibility is that he has to enforce his law effectively. But on the other hand, contrary, if you see that he has a personal interest because he is getting threats from the unknown quarters, that is again a big issue for him. So whether to go with a personal interest or whether to carry out his professional responsibilities. So there's a clear-cut conflict of interest, which is again an ethical dilemma. And finally, is that whether he has to carry out his duty with objectivity and with utmost integrity, or he has to show compassion and empathy towards the local migrants, the labor unions and all those people, or he will not think about them, he will just enforce the law and shut down these industries. So again, this is a big ethical dilemma. So based on this ethical dilemma is what is the option that he has to take. Although in this question, so nothing has been asked as to what is the best possible option. So try to look into all the directives, and once you look into all the directives, then you can look for the best options, and that could help you to come out with the best options. So in this way, what we will do is we will take up every case study that has been asked in the previous year and try to give the best possible idea as to how to approach a case study. So I hope that you enjoyed this particular case study as well, and as far as I could see, there was tremendous response for the other case studies as well. So in this way, we will move forward with the other case studies. So if you want the PPT of this particular case study, you can get it from my Telegram channel, that is Babu 337. And to get any other important updates, you can also follow me in my Instagram account. And any questions that you have with regard to civil service examination also, you can reach out to me in my Instagram account. Thank you very much. All the very best. God bless.